Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us with this program today. This program today is our first in a series called the CEO Forum, a candid board talk with Delta Dental. I'm Melody Rose. I am an attorney at Frederickson and Byron, and we are hosting this event. We're very excited to have you all here. We've only been in the space since June, and so we appreciate you all making the trek out here to check out our new space. I'm also a member of our NACD Minnesota chapter. And before I get on to talk a little bit more about this program, I am going to talk a little bit about NACD for those of you in the room who may not be members yet. NACD is a national recognized group of corporate governance participants, whether they're directors, wannabe directors, attorneys such as myself that practice in the area, and others. One of the wonderful things about NACD membership is the news, the information, and the trends that they provide that empowers directors. We also offer an unprecedented certification program with over 2,000 people certified or are in process of getting certified. NACD offers great opportunities to connect with influential corporate leaders, board directors around the country. We have over 23,000 members nationwide and over 8,400 members on private company boards. There's a pretty even split between public boards, private boards, and nonprofit boards in our membership. Minnesota chapter here covers Minnesota, as well as South Dakota, North Dakota, and Western Wisconsin. We have 873 subscribers, approximately 100 of which are individual members, and the remaining are members who belong to our 57 corporate members. And what corporate members mean is that they buy a membership that covers their entire board. And so it's wonderful to have them a part of it. One of the wonderful things, at least in my opinion, is the annual summit that NACD offers, and that actually starts on Sunday this year. And we'll be running from Sunday through Wednesday. If any of you are heading to Summit, just want to remind you all that we are kicking off with a little gathering at the Gaylord on the 8th at 6:30. It's a great program. There also is a virtual element to that event. If you can't make it to Washington, DC for it, you can attend virtually. And I do want to just call out that we have one of our very own who is actually acting as host of the entire program on the main stage. She will be moderating on the main stage. Her name is Roshini Rajkumar. And she is a crisis strategist, a C-suite advisor, a media insider, and an inspired speaker. And for those of you who know her, you would nod with how I described her. So we're really excited to have her up there and for Summit this year. And real quick, just want to remind you of our next program, because once you hear these all, you're going to have to sign up for all of them. So our next program is November 2nd. It's 7:30 a.m. at the Minneapolis Club. It's Learn from the Masters. It is highlighting the outstanding directors who won that honor this past year. For those of you who attended that dinner, it's sponsored by the Twin Cities Business publication. We're going to have 4 of those 5 honorees on a panel that'll be moderated by our former chapter president, John Bergstrom. And this is really exciting. We're really thrilled about this next one. It's November 29th, 7:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's our first half-day program, and this is called the Nonprofit Board Lab, a working forum to lead what's next. Really excited. This community here has a very strong reputation for supporting nonprofits, and we want to tap into that. And anybody who's interested, please go to our website and sign up. We're really excited about it. As I said, it's a half-day event. It's at the McNamara Alumni Center on campus, the University of Minnesota campus. It's designed to elevate and celebrate the nonprofit board governance ecosystem while delving into critical impact issues that will help directors prepare. We have a great lineup of luminary speakers. And again, if you want more information, please check out our website. Finally, before the main event here, I want to thank our sponsors. We have Empower sponsors, Frederickson, KPMG, and Protiviti. We have our advanced sponsors, the Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies and Management HQ. We have our Connect sponsors, Capella University. We have in-kind sponsors, Clifton Larson Allen and KP Companies, and our program sponsors, Margaret A. Cargill Foundation Fund, Minneapolis Foundation, St. Paul Foundation, and Best Buy Foundation. One more quick thing before I move on, since Shannon was so wonderful with her introductions earlier and asked our chapter board to acknowledge themselves. We have our chapter president, Myron, is here in the audience. And so thank you for joining us, Myron. All right, program. CEO Forum, a candid board talk with Delta Dental. Excellent program. I'm really excited. I was already telling everyone in the audience that when we were doing our little prep session, I was taking notes already about all you were saying. So I'm looking forward to this. We have Rod Young and Mike Howe from the Delta Dental Board joining us, actually CEO and Vice Chair. Welcome. And our moderator is Kim Nelson. And Kim is not only a highly respected independent director, shout out to Kim. She is one of the honorees for the 2023 NACD Directorship 100 across the nation. She's being honored this year. Congratulations, Kim. One of our former chapter members, Meredy Doherty, is also being honored for that award. So we're really, really proud of our Minnesota chapter this year. All right, with that, I'm going to get done and get out of here. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Kim.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Melody, and thank you to Frederickson and Byron for hosting today's conversation. And I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate Melody on her recent promotion to president of Frederickson and Byron. Congratulations. A warm welcome to all of you here with us live and all of you online. My name is Kim Nelson. I am a member of NACD. I'm also a director on the corporate boards of Colgate-Palmolive, Cummins Inc., and Tate & Lyle PLC. I began this work after a long executive career with General Mills, where I held a number of different operating roles and ended up in the C-suite as SVP of External Relations. Today's panel brings together two extraordinary, successful partners. These are leaders who've worked together at Delta Dental for over a decade. I want to start by introducing Rod Young, give you a little bit more information on his background. Rod is, of course, CEO of Delta Dental. And he's also CEO of Stratacor, which is Delta Dental's parent company. Rod has a proven track record of success in the pharmaceutical, med tech, and oral health industries. Rod has been a transformational leader for 11 years at Delta Dental, and he's really changed the company during his time leading it. Before joining Delta Dental, he was CEO of two publicly traded med tech companies. He has 25 years of board experience in public and nonprofit organizations across med tech, health and wellness, healthcare, youth mentoring, oral health insurance, and financial services. Our second guest today is Mike Howe. And Mike also serves on the board of directors of Stratacor. He's served since 1989. He's the owner of MW Howe Consulting, LLC, and also has had an extensive career in healthcare, having served as EVP of Allina Health System and as CHRO of HealthSpan Health System, amongst other executive positions. So a warm welcome to both of you. We wanted to have this conversation today because we're in this time of extraordinary transformation and disruption. And be it supply chain challenges or cyber risk or new emerging technologies like AI, language learning models, or machine learning, geopolitical risks, we're all grappling with that, inflation, post-pandemic human capital management strategies. This is a really extraordinary time for our businesses. And the partnership between CEO and board chair has perhaps never been as important as it is as we navigate these really roiled waters. And in the room, the relationship between the CEO and the board chair really sets the tone for the relationship between the board and the executive leadership team. So these two have governed together for over a decade, and we really just wanted to have a candid conversation about how they've done it and how they have built the trust, the collaboration, and the excellence, the governance excellence that has resulted in the results, the strong business results that we've seen at Delta Dental. So I'm going to hop in. Before I do that, I want to let you know we're going to have some time for questions at the end. So please be thinking about any questions you have as the conversation unfolds. And online, you can drop those questions into the chat, and we'll try to pick those up there as well. So let's go ahead and get started. My first question is for you, Rod.
Okay.
And I'm interested in your perspective on board governance and board relationships and how your thinking about how to effectively manage those has changed over time.
Well, first of all, thank you, Kim, for agreeing to facilitate this, and thanks, Fredericton, for having us here from that perspective. And thank you to everyone that joined. And I didn't make our Delta folks, Kim. They came on their own. When I first was exposed to serving on a board, I thought board governance was okay to have. I've grown to know that board governance, good board governance, is as important as a unique product. It's as important as a seasoned leadership team. It's as important as great technology. It falls right in that same category. And my growth in understanding more has largely to do with this person sitting next to me named Mike Howe. Mike and I have a very unique relationship. I've been on the board of Delta for 20 years, and I've been in this chair as the CEO for 11 years. And Mike was the vice chair and then the chair in this process. And he and I we are very different in our styles, and as you may be able to tell when you hear from him. However, that collaboration that you mentioned, that working together that you mentioned, is all founded on respect and trust. And although we are different, we have merged and managed to work very closely together. And you're right, Kim, it is noticed in the boardroom. Mike and I have a relationship, and we have a relationship in our boardroom, and we call it our board culture. And we're architects of that together.
And just to take it one step farther, how do you go about building relationships with your board members, and how do you ensure that you are leveraging the unique skills and talents of each board member?
Respect first, trust second. And then in our board, particularly, we take great pride. There are no self-interest. There's no personal agendas that are associated with it. The commitment from all of our board members to the person is about the mission of the organization, the vision of where we want to go. It's about our shareholders, our stakeholders. It's about all of the constituents that we work with from that perspective. So in that case, it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy because if you have respect and you trust individuals that you're working with, the rest comes together.
Okay. All right, Mike, we'll turn to you. I'd like to get your perspective on how a board chair engages, supports, and guides the CEO to ensure, the optimal outcomes for the organization.
Well, I think there's a couple of aspects of that. And first, let me comment about Rod's comments earlier. I mean, Rod, as a CEO, his personality fills the room. And I'm more of the wallflower. That's how simple it is. And so we have very different styles that we had to work through at the beginning years. I was much more process oriented. He's much more results oriented, and that really fits, I think, with, in my point of view, of executive leadership versus board governance leadership. It's two different things. And to me, the CEO chair relationship, as it's observed within the boardroom and from the management, sets the tone for the entire organization. I think there's lots of things I think companies can do with this. I think from my perspective, my experience has been that as a chair, your role is primarily process, and as a CEO, your role is primarily execution. And so they're joined together within the strategy of the organization and through the results. But I think the board chair needs, through the focus on process, what I've tried to do is view it as a coaching role or mentoring coaching role. And that isn't coaching with the CEO, that's coaching with everyone. In other words, so you're always looking for an opportunity to engage people around where they are and what they're trying to accomplish as part of that role. And I think that sets a tone within the board too, as people come on the board different times of their careers with different experiences. So they understand there's a self-interest within the board to come forward. The second, I think, is just the, I call it coordination for the chair. So you're coordinating committees, meeting, and part of that is communication between meetings. And so people are clear on the agenda and can come and give their best selves when they come into the work of the organization. And the last one is I think about is related to succession planning, but I think of it more as I'm blocking out what I have in mind.
Come back to it.
We'll come back to
Yeah,
that, but I
let's come
think,
back to it.
but it essentially is no surprises.
Mm.
And so when you're looking at any committee and its role, whether they're protecting the reputational capital, the financial capital, the human management capital, whatever it might be, that no surprises. So it's really about creating an organization that does all of those things.
So much of,
Go ahead.
go ahead. So much of your role, really your shared role, but for sure the board chair, is creating a board culture that that allows everyone to bring their A game to the table. And I'd be interested in your thoughts on board culture, how you build, what do you think are the most important characteristics of a strong board culture, and how do you build that?
I think Rod said it. I think the board culture, where there's respect and trust, is really basic. I mean, boards can come apart so many different ways. And so part of it is really having an appreciation for what people bring, asking for them to bring their authentic selves into that occasion, and that they're there together to represent the mission and the vision and strategies of the organization. And so, part of the role there is to engage people individually. I have met individually with each board member once a year. We talk about how they want to contribute, where they see themselves in the future, whether they're wary of certain things, so it allows me to then to engage them in the meeting in a way that assures that we're attending to the group process and people are fully engaged. In boards, you're always looking for discretionary effort in all of the work, and so engagement of the board is basic to having a well-functioning board. And so that's essentially how not only but we approach it. I think they look at the CEO and the chair as evidence within the board. There's times when Rod and I agree on most times. Rod and I agree on things. There's occasions where we don't. And we don't try, and I don't think we ever have, showed a difference of opinion in the meeting that we weren't prepared to introduce as, here's two different points of view on this issue. And so we're trying to work it out and so it requires meeting before, understanding each other's point of view. And simple model for that is that as you think about role clarity between the CEO and the chair is to think some decisions the CEO might have the authority to act and simply inform the chair, or vice versa on a board issue. And others, it's really consultative. Before something's communicated, you want to make sure the other person is consulted, and so you have the value of the contribution and ideas around that, and there's no surprises. And the third is really where a lot of our agenda has been, is really a shared decision making. So each person would have a veto power. So if one of the two of us don't agree on it, and it isn't going to happen. Sometimes we need to engage others in part of that process and the board as well. So I think there's some practical ways of addressing this that I think the CEO chair relationship in the process can be most effective.
You've both said no surprises a couple of times. I'm thinking about major strategic changes that you've made or navigated during your time working together, and wondering how you have prepared the board for that kind of decision making. Is there something in your process that you'd highlight for us?
I'd like to add to the culture question, and then I'll come to that real quickly. The piece that Mike, I wanted to highlight is that the board, every voice in the boardroom is valued equally. Even if we're talking about something clinical, if I have a question or if I have something from that perspective, if someone else does, I did this for you, Dr. Bates. We can ask, and it's validated, and it's not put to the side. So every voice counts. In reference to strategic decisions, important or critical strategic decisions, Mike and I have a cadence that if I know something is brewing, he and I are talking about it before it ever gets to a boiling point. Very much so. He and I are going back and forth and having exchanges from that perspective. And secondly, fortunately, I should say, we haven't had anything that's been critical that we had to make a decision within a matter of hours. When we have important decisions to make, along with my executive team, we formulate the facts. Mike and I talk about the facts. We then present it to the board as we're thinking about this. This is something that's coming at the first board meeting. We learned early on in our journey, never bring something to the board that has to be approved or voted on for the first time. We want to make sure we expose the board to it, and then we can provide additional follow-up information to it. And then if there's a vote that needs to be, or an approval that needs to happen, it happens at the next meeting from that perspective. So it's about timing, and that's the process that Mike brought to one of the many things that he brought to it. Let's not have any surprises. And so once we have enough information that it's brewing, and that before it gets to boiling, we share and we have an exchange.
Sorry, I'm going off of script a little here. There are always these times of challenge. Something always goes wrong, right? We've all experienced that. I'm curious if there's, maybe a situation in your minds that something went wrong, it went awry, and it presented a challenge, a governance challenge that you both had to navigate together. And I'd love for you to share with us how you navigated it.
Governance challenge. I don't. If you go. I don't have one.
Not a business challenge, but a governance challenge.
Well, you can give us a business challenge.
Well, I think when Rod first came in as CEO, we outsourced our administrative services and purchase it back as part of that. And we found out that that just wasn't working for our customers. And so we needed to work through a way of exiting from that and rebuilding the operations of the organization. That isn't necessarily what Rod signed up to do, but that's exactly where we were. And it was really a challenge for the board to wrestle with how significant of a change that would be. It did offer us an opportunity when we did sell what I call the back room to create the foundation, which was something that I think has been critical for us within the Minnesota community to represent the kinds of organization that we could be. But on the other hand, we found that it wasn't the processing didn't meet the needs of our dentist or network community, and sometimes also the employer purchases. So we said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so we went through a process that was very deliberative. We had outside, this isn't unusual, I think, for any organization, counsel in a number of areas to provide advice to the board. We created a subcommittee to work on these things. So it wasn't a standing committee, but the board dealt with it as a board as a whole, and worked our way through everybody just rolled up their sleeves and they worked our way through that, and made a pretty good decision, I think.
Yeah. I was answering the governance challenge. The one that he's talking about was much bigger than he described.
Yeah.
It was
From
gigantic.
the person who had the
That's right.
accident.
Much bigger than he described. So yes, yeah.
Did you want to add anything?
What about a governance? So I gave
you
an
have a
execution.
governance
I
challenge.
gave an execution.
There, yeah,
Like,
no,
you did
no, you
governance.
got to stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
That's true.
I can't think of a governance challenge that we had and I want to say that goes to both Mike and John Somrock was the chair before. We had a good governance platform, and we did things like we had NACD courses. We had consultants come in teaching about good corporate governance. We had a board member that was taught at the university. So we had good corporate governance in our DNA. Our outside counsel helped us with corporate governance. Our chief legal officer, very astute around corporate governance. So corporate governance was in our DNA. We wanted to make sure we didn't have any particular, you can't always make sure something does come up from that perspective, but we feel very fortunate that that's been part of our DNA. It really has been. And the DNA I'm referring to is sharing, transparent, open. No one in our company would ever think that there was anything that we had to hide, so we didn't hide, and so we were fortunate that way. Now, business challenges, we had a few of those, but yeah.
So let me pick up on what Rod just said with governance, because I'm thinking now we moved from more of an operating company to a holding company organization, and so we have board members with on multiple boards. Some on individual boards that aren't other boards. And so it created a much more challenging way to communicate across the organization and to coordinate governance issues. So that, I mean, we used to joke about it. Well, what hat are we wearing? I mean, there's ways of simply enjoying what you do and clarifying how you're thinking about things as you go. And so I think that has been a challenge that we've successfully navigated through. Really, the way I thought about it at the time and what we had done is Rod would be coordinating across the organizations from an executive point of view, from a governance point of view. I sat on every board, so we did that. And then from a clinical point of view, our title, what should I give him? Our dentist who serves at one of the dentists that serves on our board sat on every board too. So as a dental insurance organization, we have a number of dentists who sit on our board. And as people know who are in healthcare, physicians talk to physicians in a different way than they talk. And so It's just Dennis talked to Dennis, and so the question that Rod is who do you trust around you? So if there's also somebody from that community who can come back and represent it and say, well, this is what's going on. It just helps with the coordination of process, the communication, and the understanding of what the overall mission and attempt that you're trying to do in the organization. So I think that's it's important to be attentive to the changes that are occurring in governance and be open and inclusive and transparent about it. And that just, I think, is part of the way we operate.
One of the most critical responsibilities of an organization is making sure you have the right talent and succession plans for talent. How did you two work together to ensure that you had succession plans in place for critical leaders?
One of Mike's many strengths is he looks to the future as to what the needs are going to be from a board talent perspective, board skills perspective. And I think a lot of that has to do with this time that he spent with Alina and the multiple organizations, centralized and decentralized. And so he was able to look forward. He brought that to us as a board, and we've created, which no rocket science, but we have a pretty detailed board skills matrix. You have the names, you have what their expertise is, and then we look at our strategic plan as to where we want to go and where we are, and look at if the board skills that are required to help us get there. And we look at our succession plan, I think, Mike, every other year, particularly for the board. And we do the same thing, by the way, for executive leadership. But from this board skills matrix, that we talk about succession planning often in terms of where we want to go. And I say Mike and I talk about it continuously. And then when we look at, there's a term that's going to, or there's as an example, all things digital, everything blew up digital, 4 or 5 years ago. We had no one on the board that had digital skills, if you will, from that perspective. So that became a gap that we had to look and to try to fill. So it's an ongoing conversation between the chair and the CEO as to what do we need from a board talent perspective.
Let me build on that, if I may. And the word I was thinking of earlier was continuity. And I can't imagine why I didn't think of that word. So coaching, coordination, and continuity, because I talk about continuity all the time. It is something that we address all the time. It's not something you do every other year. Development is a part of a whole organizational process, from understanding strategy and creating the organization design, and then filling that organization with the talent that would make it successful. And so as we've looked at the governance roles, we, through our governance and nominating committee, do essentially a talent planning around the committee structure that we have and the leadership structures, the challenges of the organization, strategies that we are putting in place, that where we may have someone with background and experience that we can tap into, and if we don't, then there's other ways of trying to find it, whether it's someone coming on board or educating the board in that area, or having consultants work with you. So it really comes back into the day-to-day. And also with my one-on-ones, when I'm meeting with people, having discussions about the committees they're on and where they want to serve, allows me to understand, where their commitment and motivation would be to give the kind of effort that we expect. And so I think there's 2 committees, the governance and nominating, that's looking at the governance. And each year we go through the process, and Rod and I are talking about it just in terms of the needs that we have quite frequently throughout the year with our one-on-one meetings. And also for the executive leadership, the Human Resource and Compensation Committee, of course, looks at that. But I think as a board chair, that the continuity of the board and the CEO succession is really the chair's role to be able to be accountable for. So right now in my pocket, I have, if something happens to Rod, a plan. Rod and I know what the plan is, and it's there and available as part of that. If it's something long-term and a challenge, then there's a couple of different approaches that we would have. And I think for a board chair to take that as a personal accountability is a way of assuring that you're meeting the obligations of the different stakeholders that you're with.
Mhm. You talked earlier about how to maximize the contributions of all of your board members, and I'm wondering how you manage conflict in the boardroom, and not conflict, that's not the right word, differences of opinion that are strongly held. And how do you work through that when there's an issue where you have wildly divergent views, which you want, but how do you drive to alignment?
You want to answer that?
I'll try. I'll try. We fortunately, Kim, have not recently, and I go back to when I first started, and even then, there are differences of opinion. If you recall, I just mentioned that we try to, and we've been pretty successful leaving personal agendas in the closet, checking the ego at the door, if you will, from that perspective. And we operate with, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And so everyone has a voice, everyone is independent, and everyone can share from that perspective. And when that happens, then we can have good dialogue around it, and we can be respectful and receive what. And if there's something that if there's a really strong opinion and we can't resolve it at that time, we'll go off and do some research on it and come back and address it. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. But we haven't had any fisticuffs in the boardroom. we haven't had that. So yeah.
No, and I used to wrestle. So
Yeah, and that's why, because he would wrestle
so,
us to the ground. If we
well, I'd like to add to what Rod said there, and I'm more concerned not so much about whether you call it conflict or differences of perspective that occur in the board as I am with the things that aren't said.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's something that a board member has that's kind of sticking with them and they have a concern about something and it's not coming forward so that we can all deal with that, then the board is missing an opportunity for furthering its agenda and accomplishing what its tasks are to accomplish. And so if I see in the meeting that people who I know really have background and knowledge about something and they're not bringing it forward, I'll
Call on them.
Come on in. What do you have on your mind? Kind of
Mhm.
thing. And so that I think it's really setting the tone for having differences of opinion and dealing with it respectfully. And so that people start with part of trust is having a safe space. And so the board should be a safe space for saying what's on your mind and bringing it forward, and recognizing that there's certainly boundaries around that, and that if there's something that's in it that doesn't really happen very often, but if something's out of character, as a chair of that meeting, you move it on. You can, and so it's just a way of creating an organization where people feel free to disclose what's really on their mind.
Yeah, the trust you talked about.
trust.
Sure. One last question before we open it up to the rest of the gang. You're both seasoned leaders. You've worked together a long time. Do you have a few specific best practices or governance principles that you might want to share with the group?
Well, we've touched on a few of them.
Yeah.
No surprises. A basic one, we talked before we got on air about being prepared. Those are the ones that come to mind. We've simple as timeliness in terms of being on time for meetings and some of those principles. From a governance perspective, I would say, again, to go back to operate with trust and respect, leave personal agendas behind, honor the culture and the boardroom. And when I say honor, it is be a part of it if you can. Continue to express your independent and as Mike said, if there's something, and we've only had a couple of times where we've had to follow up on something, we've moved it on, but we haven't left it. We come back to it the next meeting, or there may be some conversations off after the meeting that we go in terms of, so we don't ever let someone say something and it just dies. If it's something that we can't address at the time, we come back to it. And I say transparency, transparency.
What I'd offer for board members is best practice is bring your true self into the boardroom. You need to, I think, to be an effective director, to be authentic, to not simply show what the public sees as part of your resume, but also where your passions are. And so if you can engage on that basis, then people tend to really give extraordinary effort to these things. And so I think of it, a little model I have is just I, we, it. When I did executive coaching, we all bring our I into the boardroom, but we're trying to accomplish the we to get to the it. And so if you kind of keep that in mind, that share the mission and share the values, and we're committed to the organization, then outliers can occur, but they're embraced as much as being on course.
Great.
I'd add one thing, and I think you can tell by the relationship that Mike and I have. Board service should be enjoyable also. And as hard as we work and the great work that we do, there is a high degree of reward and enjoyment in it. We were interviewing a board candidate as a subgroup, and she said, I'm surprised that there's so much laughter during this interview. And it's because we do enjoy what we do. We work really hard, but there's enjoyment that comes from it also.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. Life is short, and we want to serve, but we can enjoy the experience as well. All right, Shannon, do we have any, or Melody, do we have any questions from? Do we have any? I'm going to open it up for questions in the audience.
We have a question right here in front.
Yeah, actually, before we go to that, I have a quick question for Kim. You asked them for best practices, given all of your experience on board service. Do you have any best practices you want to add to what they were saying?
Why don't we have LaJuan go? And I'll
All right,
give you my best practices.
You
Let me think about
need a
this.
minute? All right.
Got so many of them.
Hi, thank you, everyone. This is very insightful and a wonderful experience to hear from all of you. Kim mentioned that it's great to have everyone bring their A game to the board. Could you share your experience over the last 2 years of working together as CEO and chair, what your experience has been like with the onboarding process for new board members, and has that changed over the last 10 years?
You hear me snicker a little bit. That I will tell you, that's one of the areas that I know we can make improvements in. We've come a long way from some years ago, but we're a highly regulated industry, as many of us are, and there are a lot of things that we need to share with onboarding new board members. And it's one of the, if I ever got a check mark for areas of improvement, it would be the onboarding process and how we go through it. So, Mike,
Well, some things we've done, I agree with Rod, but during COVID, of course, it was all virtual, and so we had a number of new board members that came on during that first time. And so when you're really building on relationships as the first way you get to excellence, it's kind of hard to do. So onboarding, I think, slipped a little bit for that. What we tried to do is some meetings with the new members. Technique, I'm more in the style and technique, but the technique that we use was creating a buddy system. So connecting a new board member with a current board member, so there's somewhere to go other than Rod and myself, that they can talk to a colleague. So there's things like that I think are there. But overall, it takes quite time to come onto a board and contribute. One of our board members has said, well, I always tell them, don't say a word for the first 6 months. And that's, so, and there's some truth to that. I think that in order to really come into a new organization and be effective and contribute, part of it is understanding what the lay of the land is and what the expectations might be. And a lot of times those can't be picked up in a course or in a conversation, just observing over time and learning how.
Give me the mic, I'm gonna use it. So I have a follow-up question to that. You talked about onboarding. How do you go about identifying directors? And you mentioned a little bit about one of the gaps that you had in expertise on your board. Maybe speak to that process just a bit.
In the past, we have used outside search firms to help us from that perspective. And that process was okay. The newer board members have been identified from board members within the organization. And we've got as Mike talked about, we've got a governance and nominating committee that they have a subgroup. We have a subgroup of that committee that does the identification and the conversation. Dr. Bates, who's sitting here in the pink, is one of our newest, if not our newest board member. And she and I met she and her husband were at a Timberwolves game. And it happened to have a sign that said Delta Dental Minnesota. Someone next to me, I think it was Tim Quinn from Delta, said, "Hey, look, our logo's up there." And she heard someone say Delta Dental. She was sitting behind me. She said, "Hey, how do you know Delta Dental?" And that's how it all started. So, and she's a pediatric dentist. But I met her, and we needed an additional clinician on our board, and she met all the requirements, and she's been with us now for how many years now, Doctor? 4 years, I guess.
Just building upon that,
May I continue? And part of how we identify new talent to come on board. Kim Nelson's been very helpful in that. She has a network of individuals that she shares and that she shared, and we probably will have two of her individuals that she shared with us. And so it's about networking for us in this process.
Hold on one more minute, because as Rod, we're going to build on each other here. Because I really think one of the things over the last decade that Rod and I have worked on very hard, the board has, when we decided to rebuild the business way back when, we said we want to be a community-centric organization. So that meant really understanding the communities that we're serving, how to make sure that the broader backgrounds that people bring and contribute, we would have engaged in our board. So this is not a couple of year deal. This is a thing that really has taken us a decade, I think, to lead to where we are today. And so it really did start with search firms, because our members of the board really didn't have access to the knowledge of who this talent might be. And that was somewhat successful, but not always. Now, when we have the chairs of our search committee email, I think when you're searching for people who can broaden the gender differences within the organization, I heard this from our chair of our search committee, so I can speak to this way. When new board members came in and saw a female who was actually chairing a committee and leading that aspect of the board, Rod says, if you see it, you know you can do it. I mean, that means all the difference. And so our board now is built around a lot different characteristics than it was a decade. So now our board members really do have access into those communities. And so the search firm requirement is great. And we really understand more of what it is that we want. And so we have a lot of processes as far as Ross mentioned a little bit, but we have people who join in with it. We are pretty slow to engage, but ultimately make because we have term limits, 3-year term limits. But there's no number of terms you can have, so it's not like someone coming in and say, "Well, I've got 2 terms and I'm out." This is a long-term commitment, so it makes it challenging also for a board chair to, when someone is ready to leave or haven't committed to make sure that people make good decisions for themselves that also help the board decide, maybe it's time to go do something else. So I think, that's the kind of organization we are. It isn't for everyone, every organization, but I think that's how we've gotten to where we are today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, not at all.
Couldn't help but go.
Yeah, no, not at all. Very insightful. Thank you. Because my question actually ties into that, and it's a follow-up on board composition and skills. So I'm on the nominating and governance committee for both of my public company boards. And on one of my boards, we've been having a conversation around the nuanced difference between experience versus expertise. And I'm curious as to your perspective. So, is it better perhaps to have, several board members with experience in a particular area, or maybe one board member with particular expertise? I'll pick an example in technology. 3 board members might have significant experience, but they may not have had a career as a CIO. I'm just curious as to your perspective.
I'll take a spin on that. I know Michael. So 10 years ago, what that Mike referred to, it was primarily about experience, board experience. And it has morphed to the other side. Dr. Bates is a prime example, and I know, Linda, you didn't think I was going to be talking about you so much, but she had limited board experience, but she was a clinician. She's a pediatric dentist. Our spaces around family and children is very special for us. So we knew that we had enough experience on the board. Mike mentioned the buddy system. She's buddied with one of our other dentists on the board, and Dr. Sakula. And so that part was covered. And then we got her clinical expertise as a pediatric dentist in that process. And so it has flipped and from that perspective. And also our board, we don't ever call anyone old on our board, but we have veterans on our board that have served for a while, right? And a veteran is someone that's more seasoned and has experience from that perspective. And so we have enough experience on the board so that we can bring those that may not have as much board experience, but they have the expertise that they need. Mike, that's true.
My education focus was on aging. So the study of aging was something I took a significant interest in. Now that I'm at that age,
Not that
it's just about maturity. I do think that it's good to have a balance. New ideas can come from anywhere. And, it's really around people having an openness, appreciation for what perspectives people bring. Sometimes you can't get that as members of your board. So our board does pursue education as part of a board development collectively. Quarterly, we have before board meetings. Education. Yeah. And so it builds relationships as well as learning together around these things. And so I think that there's different ways that you can bring the content into the organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be represented in the room as a member. Now it's critical. There's some areas where having someone with that type of background, the Rod actually chair an audit committee at one time, but I wouldn't dare. So I think
he only says that because my background is sales marketing.
Yeah.
I have no other background.
So I think I think as a board to broaden the question in a way, so to say, what's the best way for us to, and how critical is it that we have that expertise on?
And I'll close with that question. Cybersecurity, everyone's crazy about, right? And we've thought about bringing a cybersecurity individual on, but we've been advised that even if we brought someone with experience cybersecurity, that person's experience may be dated compared to how quickly it's going. So we have a cybersecurity outside advisory group that we have 2 of our cybersecurity execs that belong to this, and they meet on a regular basis and talk about all the trends, and we're picking up things from there. We also have cybersecurity audits and things from that perspective. But that's one that we were we're still bouncing around to see if that's something that we should do.
Thank you for a great panel this afternoon. Mike, I think I'll address this to you. It seems like much of the way you work with your board, it's personal relationships, it's reading the room, it's meeting with people. So in this new era of Zoom, where we are not doing as much of that, if at all, what challenges has that presented? How have you adapted to that and, still be able to encourage those relationships? Because it's very difficult on Zoom. When the meeting's over, boom, leave me, red dot, leave meeting, boom, everybody's gone. There's no hanging around, talking about things you might have been thinking about, but didn't want to talk in front of everybody else about, things like that. I found very frustrating.
So do I. I mean, it was really a challenge during that period of time because of having meetings, virtual meetings, to build relationships. But I think part of it is also phone calls in between, knowing something about people are interested, the broader interest might be, and connecting on that basis. Not necessarily, because I'm not a big social guy. Rod's the extrovert, I'm the introvert. Okay, so, but having appreciation for what people are attending to comes through, and so I do agree that that's part of it, but it's not just the chair's job; it's everyone's job on our board to see that their role is to have an interest in the other members of that board, and so there's a consideration that occurs. So it's there wasn't a good way. That's the candid answer during that period of time.
One of the things we did with Zoom in mind is we had, we talked about the board education. We continue to have board education night, Thursday night before the board meeting. We sent little gifts of, we sent a cocktail mix a couple of times, and we sent things out for that board. And so we had a happy hour during the board meeting, and we try to play like we're in front of
board education.
Yes. You don't want to talk about the tequila shots? Okay, yeah. But the night before we would send out a package, and actually we would toast, we toast and try to have some form of a virtual relationship that we're developing or continuing, I should say.
I think we're going to have to leave it there on the tequila shots during the board meeting. Well, thank you both so much. It's really special to get to see inside of such an important relationship, and you two have really set the bar high for what excellence looks like. So thank you very much.
And thank you, you three, for joining us today and providing great insight. It is a pleasure and a privilege to have you with us. So Rod Young, Mike Hull, and Kim Nelson. And Kim, we're still curious for those insights. So we'll tune in later for that, for those insights. To all of you that are here with us today, please complete your surveys. And for those of you that have joined us online, please complete the digital survey. And be sure to look for our upcoming programs. We hope that you will participate with us going forward. And please let us know if there is content that you'd like to hear from us. Again, thank you, Rod, Mike, and Kim. Thank you, Melody, and thanks all of you. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.